The first gunshot shattered the morning silence before Owen Prescott could even finish his second cup of coffee, and he knew without looking that it was his younger brother Otis scaring off another prospective bride from the ranch. It was June 1878 in Wilson, Kansas, and the Prescott Ranch had earned itself quite the reputation as the place where eligible women went to have their hearts broken and their pride wounded. Owen set down his cup with deliberate care, the porcelain clicking against the saucer in a way that would have made his mother proud, and walked out onto the porch to see what fresh disaster awaited him this time. The woman in the buggy was already turning her horses around, her face flushed red with indignation, while Otis stood in the yard with his rifle still pointed at the sky. Oliver, the middle brother, leaned against the barn with his arms crossed, watching the scene with the same cold disinterest he showed everything these days. Owen was 32 years old, Otis was 28, and Oliver had just turned 30 last month. They had been running the Prescott Ranch together for the past 6 years, ever since their father had died of pneumonia in the winter of 1872. Their mother had passed 3 years before that, and it was her death that had started the slow unraveling of the Prescott family. "That makes 12 this year," Owen said quietly as he joined his brothers in the yard. The dust from the departing buggy settled around them like a judgment. "She smelled like lilac water and desperation," Otis replied, finally lowering his rifle, "just like all the others." "You could have at least let her introduce herself before you went shooting at the clouds," Owen said, but there was no real heat in his words. He understood his brothers better than they understood themselves sometimes. Every woman who came to the ranch was measured against a memory they all carried, and every single one of them fell short. Their mother, Margaret Prescott, had been a woman of uncommon strength and gentle wisdom. She had run the ranch alongside their father, could birth a calf as easily as she could play the piano, and had a laugh that sounded like wind chimes on a summer evening. She had died of cholera when Owen was 26, and something in all 3 brothers had broken that day. Their father had tried to hold them together, but he had been half a man without his wife, and when he finally passed, the brothers had simply closed ranks and shut out the world. The town of Wilson had taken notice. Matchmakers from as far as Topeka had sent their most eligible young ladies to the Prescott Ranch, but Otis would shoot at the sky to scare them off. Oliver would speak to them with such icy politeness that they would flee from sheer discomfort, and Owen would simply shake his head and send them on their way with apologies. The brothers were not cruel by nature, but they were united in their determination to remain unmarried. No woman could possibly understand them the way their mother had. No woman could make the house feel like home again. "We have got to stop meeting like this," said a voice from the road, and all 3 brothers turned to see who had spoken. A woman sat astride a chestnut mare, her riding skirt dusty from travel and her dark hair pulled back in a practical braid. She was perhaps 26 or 27, with sun-bronzed skin that spoke of days spent outdoors and eyes the color of warm honey. She was not beautiful in the conventional sense, but there was something arresting about her face, something that made Owen straighten his shoulders without thinking. "If you are here for courting purposes, you best turn that horse around," Otis called out, already reaching for his rifle again. The woman laughed, and the sound cut through the morning air like a bell. It was not a delicate laugh or a practiced one. It was full and genuine and completely unself-conscious. Owen felt something stir in his chest, something that had been dormant for 6 years. "I am not here to court anyone," the woman said, guiding her mare into the yard. "I am here about the job posting for a ranch hand. I saw the notice in town yesterday." The 3 brothers exchanged glances. It was true that Owen had posted a notice for help. They needed someone who could handle the horses, help with the cattle drive in the fall, and generally make themselves useful around the property. But they had been expecting a man. "We need someone who can do hard labor," Oliver said, speaking for the first time. His voice was cool and measured. "No offense intended, miss, but ranching is not women's work." The woman dismounted in one fluid motion, and Owen noticed the way she landed balanced on both feet, ready for anything. She was tall for a woman, probably 5 feet and 7 inches, and she moved with the confidence of someone who knew exactly what her body could do. "I have been working ranches since I was 12 years old," she said evenly. "My father owned a spread outside of Hays City. I can rope, brand, break horses, deliver calves, and shoot better than most men I have met. I need the work and you need the help. My name is Louisa Dalton and I am asking for a fair chance." Otis snorted. "A woman ranch hand, that is rich." But Owen was studying Louisa Dalton more carefully now. Her hands were calloused, her posture was straight but not rigid, and there was something in the set of her jaw that reminded him of his mother when she had made up her mind about something. Margaret Prescott had never been one to back down from a challenge. "Can you show us what you can do?" Owen asked, ignoring the sharp looks from his brothers. Louisa nodded. "Give me any horse you have got." 20 minutes later, the 3 Prescott brothers stood by the corral fence watching Louisa Dalton work with a 3-year-old Mustang that they had been planning to sell because none of them had the time or patience to break him properly. The horse was wild-eyed and skittish, dancing away every time Louisa approached with the halter. But she did not rush. She did not force. She moved slowly, speaking in a low voice that Owen could not quite hear, and gradually the horse began to calm. She let him sniff her hands, then her shoulder, then the halter itself. Within an hour she had the halter on him and was leading him around the corral as docile as a lamb. "That is impossible," Otis muttered. "That is skill," Owen corrected. He made a decision that he knew his brothers would fight him on, but he did not care. "Miss Dalton, the job is yours if you want it. $30 a month plus room and board." Louisa turned to look at him, and for just a moment, Owen could have sworn he saw his mother's smile on her face. It was the same mixture of satisfaction and knowing amusement, as if she had known all along how things would turn out. "I accept," Louisa said. That evening, as the brothers sat down to dinner in the big ranch house, the atmosphere was tense. Oliver had not spoken to Owen since the hiring decision, and Otis kept shooting dark looks across the table. They had prepared a simple meal of beef stew and cornbread, the same thing they ate most nights. Louisa had been given the small room off the kitchen, the one that had belonged to their mother's housekeeper years ago. "You have lost your mind," Oliver said finally, breaking the silence. "A woman working the ranch. What will people say?" "People already say plenty about us," Owen replied calmly. "They say we are hermits and woman-haters and probably insane. Adding one more rumor to the pile will not hurt." "It is not proper," Otis insisted. "A single woman living here with 3 unmarried men." "Then people can think what they like," Owen said. "I saw how she handled that horse. That kind of skill does not come from nowhere. She knows what she is doing and we need the help." Before either brother could argue further, there was a knock on the door. Owen opened it to find Louisa standing there, still in her dusty traveling clothes. She had washed her face and hands, and her hair was now hanging loose around her shoulders in dark waves. "I wanted to thank you properly for the job," she said. "I know it was not an easy decision." "Come in," Owen said, stepping aside. "We were just having supper. There is plenty." Louisa hesitated, then entered. The 3 brothers watched as she moved through the room, taking in the details. The house was clean but sparse, functional rather than comfortable. There were no curtains on the windows, No rugs on the floors, no photographs on the walls. It looked like a place where men existed rather than lived. "This is a good house," Louisa said, running her hand along the back of a chair. "Strong bones. It just needs some care." "It suits us fine," Oliver said stiffly. Louisa looked at him for a long moment, and Owen saw something flicker in her eyes, understanding, perhaps, or pity. "I am sure it does," she said gently. "May I ask you something?" "Go ahead," Owen replied. "How long has it been since your mother passed?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Otis stiffened, Oliver went pale, and Owen felt his throat tighten. No one had asked them that question directly in years. People in town tiptoed around the subject, afraid of causing offense. "9 years," Owen said finally. "Why do you ask?" Louisa pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited, and somehow the gesture did not seem rude. It seemed natural. "Because I lost my mother too," she said. 4 years ago, fever took her, and I know what it is like to live in a house that used to be a home." The brothers sat in stunned silence. Owen found himself sitting down across from Louisa without consciously deciding to do so. Otis and Oliver remained standing, but they were listening. "My father fell apart after she died," Louisa continued. "He stopped eating properly, stopped taking care of the ranch, stopped talking to me and my sisters. It was like he was a ghost haunting his own life. Eventually, he just gave up. He sold the ranch last year and moved to St. Louis to live with my aunt. My sisters got married and moved away. I stayed because I could not imagine being anywhere else." "So why did you come here?" Owen asked softly. Louisa met his eyes, and Owen felt that strange stirring in his chest again. "Because I needed a fresh start. And because I saw 3 men who reminded me of my father, and I thought maybe I could help." "We do not need help," Oliver said sharply. "We need a ranch hand." "Then that is what I will be," Louisa replied, but her gaze remained steady on Owen's face. "Just a ranch hand." The next morning, Louisa proved she was as good as her word. She was up before dawn, already feeding the horses when Owen emerged from the house. She worked through the morning without complaint, mending fences, mucking out stalls, and helping Otis move a small herd of cattle to fresh grazing land. She did not talk much, but when she did speak, her words were precise and useful. By noon, even Otis had to admit she knew what she was doing. Owen found himself watching her more than he should have. There was something mesmerizing about the way she moved through the ranch, the way she seemed to understand intuitively what needed to be done. She reminded him of his mother not in appearance but in presence. Margaret Prescott had been blonde and blue-eyed where Louisa was dark, but both women had that same quality of quiet competence, that same ability to make difficult things look easy. "You are staring," Oliver said, appearing at Owen's elbow. "I am observing," Owen corrected. "There is a difference." "Is there?" Oliver's voice was cold. "Because it looks to me like you are developing feelings for the help." Owen turned to face his brother. "And what if I am?" "Then you are a fool," Oliver replied. "She is here to work, not to replace Mother." The words stung because they were close to the truth. Owen had been thinking about his mother all morning, remembering the way she used to hum while she worked, the way she made everything seem possible. Louisa had that same quality, and it terrified him. "No one could replace Mother," Owen said quietly, "but that does not mean we have to live the rest of our lives alone." Oliver studied his older brother for a long moment, and something complicated passed across his face. Grief, perhaps, or anger, or fear. "I am not ready," he said finally. "I know," Owen replied, "but maybe it is time we tried." As the weeks passed, Louisa became an integral part of the ranch. She woke early and worked late, never complaining, never asking for special treatment. She ate meals with the brothers, and gradually, The dinner table began to feel less like a funeral gathering and more like an actual family. Louisa would tell stories about her childhood on the ranch in Hayes City, about the time she won a shooting competition against her father's ranch hands, about the horse that learned to unlatch gates and would let all the others out just for fun. The brothers, in turn, began to open up. Otis talked about the time he had gotten lost in a snowstorm, and their mother had ridden out in the blizzard to find him, singing the whole way so he could follow her voice. Oliver mentioned how their mother used to play piano every evening, filling the house with music. Owen shared the memory of his mother teaching him to read, patient and encouraging even when he struggled with the letters. But it was not just the past that brought them together. Louisa had opinions about the present too, and she was not afraid to share them. When Owen mentioned they were thinking of selling off part of their herd because they could not manage the full cattle drive in the fall, Louisa suggested hiring temporary help instead. When Otis complained about the kitchen being too small, Louisa pointed out that they could easily expand it by knocking through the wall to the pantry. When Oliver grumbled about the lack of efficiency in their branding system, Louisa redesigned their corral setup to make the work flow better. Slowly, without anyone quite noticing when it happened, the Prescott ranch began to come back to life. Louisa planted herbs in the kitchen garden, mended the curtains that had been stuffed in a trunk since Margaret's death, and even convinced the brothers to whitewash the fence around the house. The changes were small, but they added up. The ranch stopped being just a place where the Prescott brothers existed and started being a home again. Owen found himself falling in love with Louisa Dalton, and the realization terrified him. He had not expected to feel this way again, had not thought himself capable of it. But Louisa made him laugh with her dry observations about the world, challenged him to think differently about the ranch, and looked at him sometimes with such warmth in her honey-colored eyes that he felt like he could breathe properly for the first time in 9 years. He was not the only one who noticed. One evening in late July, as the brothers sat on the porch after dinner, Otis cleared his throat awkwardly. "You are in love with her," he said, not bothering with preamble. Owen considered denying it, then decided there was no point. "Yes," he said simply. "Does she know?" Oliver asked. His voice was carefully neutral. "I have not told her," Owen admitted. "I was not sure if it was appropriate given that she works for us." "She is not really just a ranch hand anymore, though, is she?" Otis pointed out. "She is part of the family now." "Even I can see that." Owen looked at his younger brother in surprise. Otis had been the most resistant to Louisa's presence at first, the most protective of their mother's memory. "You approve?" Otis shrugged. "I think Mother would have liked her," he said quietly. "And I think she would have wanted us to be happy. We have been mourning for 9 years, Owen. Maybe it is time we started living again." Oliver remained silent, staring out at the darkening prairie. Finally, he spoke. "She reminds me of Mother sometimes," he said. "Not in looks, but in the way she moves through the world. Like she knows exactly who she is and what she is capable of. It used to make me angry because I felt like we were betraying Mother's memory by letting someone else take her place. But Louisa is not trying to take her place. She is just being herself." "So you are saying I should tell her how I feel?" Owen asked. "I am saying you should do whatever your heart tells you to do," Oliver replied. "We will support you either way." The next day was Sunday, and the ranch work was light. Owen found Louisa in the stable, grooming the Mustang she had gentled on her first day. The horse now followed her around like a devoted dog, nickering whenever he saw her approach. "You have done well with him," Owen said, leaning against the stable door. Louisa looked up and smiled. "He just needed someone to be patient with him. He had been frightened and mistreated. Once he learned to trust again, the rest was easy." "Is that what you think about us too?" Owen asked. That we just needed patience. Louisa set down the brush and came to stand in front of him. She was tall enough that she only had to tilt her head slightly to look him in the eye. I think you needed time, she said, and space, and maybe someone who understood what you were going through. Louisa, Owen said, and then stopped, not sure how to continue. The words he needed seemed too large, too important. They would change everything, and he was suddenly afraid, but Louisa reached out and took his hand, her calloused fingers warm against his. I know, she said softly. I feel it too. Owen stared at her. You do. I have felt it almost since the beginning, Louisa admitted, but I was not sure if it was right, given everything. I did not want you to think I came here with ulterior motives. I would never think that, Owen said fiercely. You have worked harder than anyone I have ever known. You have earned your place here 10 times over. But that is not why you want me to stay, is it? Louisa asked, and there was a hint of vulnerability in her voice that Owen had never heard before. He stepped closer, still holding her hand, and with his free hand he reached up to cup her cheek. I want you to stay because I have fallen in love with you, he said. Because you make me laugh and make me think and make me want to be better. Because you remind me what it feels like to be alive. Because when I think about the future now, I can see you in it, and that future looks bright. Louisa's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. I love you too, she said. I tried not to. I told myself it was just gratitude or loneliness or the fact that you gave me a chance when no one else would. But it is more than that. It is everything. Owen kissed her then, and it was like coming home after a long journey. Louisa kissed him back with equal fervor, her arms coming up to wrap around his neck. They stood there in the stable, surrounded by the smell of hay and horse, and Owen felt complete in a way he had not since his mother died. When they finally pulled apart, both breathless, Louisa laughed. Your brothers are going to have opinions about this. My brothers already know, Owen admitted. They gave me their blessing last night. Louisa's eyebrows rose. They did, Owen confirmed. Even Oliver, who has been the most resistant. We have all been living in the past for too long, Louisa. You have shown us that it is possible to honor our mother's memory while still building a future. I would like to meet that future with you, Louisa said, if you will have me. I will have you, Owen replied. Today, tomorrow, and every day after that. They decided to marry in September, after the harvest was in and before the first snow. The engagement caused quite a stir in Wilson. Some people gossiped about the impropriety of a woman working as a ranch hand and then marrying her employer. Others speculated that the Prescott brothers had finally found someone desperate enough to tolerate them. But most folks were simply happy to see the Prescott ranch coming back to life. The wedding was held at the ranch itself, with half the town in attendance. Louisa wore a simple white dress that she had sewn herself, with lace at the collar that had belonged to Owen's mother. Owen wore his best suit, and both Otis and Oliver stood up with him as his best men. The local minister performed the ceremony under the big oak tree in the front yard, and when Owen kissed his bride, a cheer went up from the assembled crowd. The celebration lasted well into the evening. There was dancing and music and more food than anyone could possibly eat. Louisa danced with Owen, then with Otis and Oliver, then with what seemed like every man in Wilson who wanted to congratulate her. But she kept coming back to Owen, her husband, and each time she looked at him, Owen fell in love with her all over again. As the sun set and the guests began to depart, Louisa found herself standing with the 3 Prescott brothers on the porch. The ranch spread out before them in the golden light, peaceful and productive. Thank you, she said quietly, all of you, for taking a chance on me. Thank you, Oliver replied, and there was genuine warmth in his voice now, for reminding us how to live. The first year of marriage was not without challenges. Owen and Louisa were learning to live together as husband and wife, navigating the small conflicts and compromises that came with sharing a life. Louisa had strong opinions about how the ranch should be run, and sometimes those opinions clashed with Owen's more conservative approach. But they learned to talk things through, to listen to each other, to find middle ground. The ranch prospered under their combined leadership. Louisa's innovations increased their efficiency, and Owen's steady management kept everything running smoothly. They hired 3 additional ranch hands in the spring of 1879, including a young Mexican man named Carlos who proved to be a gifted horse trainer. The cattle drive that fall was their most successful in years, and they were able to expand their herd significantly. But more than the material success, it was the emotional transformation that mattered most. The Prescott Ranch was a home again. Louisa filled the house with small touches that made it welcoming, curtains and rugs and wildflowers in vases. She cooked elaborate Sunday dinners and invited neighbors over. She played the old piano that had been silent since Margaret's death, filling the evenings with music. And slowly, carefully, she helped the brothers heal. She encouraged them to talk about their mother, to share memories both happy and sad. She suggested they plant a garden in Margaret's honor, filled with all her favorite flowers. She found the box of Margaret's recipes and began cooking from them, bringing back the tastes of their childhood. In the spring of 1880, Louisa discovered she was pregnant. She told Owen first, early one morning as they lay in bed watching the sunrise through their window. Owen had wept with joy, holding her close and whispering promises about the kind of father he would be. The baby was born in November, a healthy boy with his mother's dark hair and his father's blue eyes. They named him Marcus, after Owen's father, and gave him the middle name of James. Otis and Oliver were devoted uncles from the moment they met him, taking turns holding him and making ridiculous faces to try to get him to smile. But parenthood also brought unexpected challenges. Louisa found herself thinking about her own mother more than ever, wishing she could ask for advice about feeding schedules and teething, and the 1,000 other tiny crises that came with caring for an infant. Owen, too, found himself remembering his mother's patience and gentleness, trying to emulate her approach. One evening, when Marcus was about 3 months old and had been crying inconsolably for hours, Louisa finally broke down. She sat in the rocking chair with the baby in her arms, tears streaming down her face, and whispered, "I do not know what to do. I do not know how to help him." Owen knelt beside the chair and put his arms around both his wife and son. "You are doing everything right," he said. "Babies cry sometimes. It does not mean you are failing." "But I feel like I am failing," Louisa said. "I feel like I should know instinctively what he needs, the way my mother seemed to know with us, but I do not. I am just guessing all the time." "That is what all parents do," Owen replied gently. "We all just guess and hope we get it right more often than we get it wrong. My mother used to tell me that raising children was equal parts love and luck." Louisa looked at him through her tears. "She said that, she did," Owen confirmed. "When I was about 10, I asked her how she always knew what to do, and she laughed and told me she did not. She said she made mistakes every day, but as long as she loved us and tried her best, the mistakes did not matter as much." The words seemed to comfort Louisa. She took a shaky breath and looked down at Marcus, who had finally quieted and was looking up at his parents with wide, curious eyes. "I love him so much it terrifies me," she admitted. "I know," Owen said. "But that terror means you are doing it right. It means you understand how precious he is." As Marcus grew from infant to toddler, the ranch continued to thrive. Owen and Louisa had fallen into an easy partnership, dividing the work according to their strengths. Louisa handled the horse breeding program and the finances, while Owen managed the cattle operation and the hired hands. Together, they made decisions about expansion, about which markets to sell in, about how to improve their yields. But more importantly, they built a life together. They had Sunday dinners with Otis and Oliver, teaching Marcus to say his uncle's names. They took long rides across the prairie on summer evenings, with Marcus secured in front of Owen on the saddle. They lay in bed at night and talked about their dreams, about the future they were building. In the summer of 1882, Louisa became pregnant again. This time she was less anxious about it, more confident in her abilities as a mother. The baby, a girl they named Catherine Rose, was born the following February. She had Louisa's honey-colored eyes and a temperament that was equal parts sweet and stubborn. Otis and Oliver were still unmarried, but they no longer rejected every woman who expressed interest. Otis had been courting the daughter of the general store owner for several months, a practical young woman named Hannah who seemed utterly unfazed by his tendency to shoot at clouds. Oliver had developed a friendship with the new schoolteacher, a quiet widow named Elizabeth who had moved to Wilson from Ohio. "You did this, you know," Owen told Louisa one evening as they watched Otis dance with Hannah at a town social. "You showed us it was possible to love again without forgetting what we lost." Louisa leaned her head on his shoulder. "I just reminded you of what you already knew," she said. "Your mother raised you to be good men. You just needed to remember that." "You think she would approve?" Owen asked, gesturing around at the life they had built. "Do you think she would be proud?" Louisa considered the question seriously. "I think," she said slowly, "that she would be grateful you found happiness again. And I think she would want you to know that loving someone new does not mean you loved her any less. The heart has room for all our loves, past and present." Owen felt his throat tighten with emotion. "I wish she could have met you," he said. "I think you two would have been friends." "I like to think so too," Louisa replied. "But in a way, I feel like I do know her. She is in all the stories you tell, in the way you treat people, in the values you hold dear. She shaped you into the man you are, and I love that man with my whole heart." The years passed in a rhythm of seasons and celebrations. Otis married Hannah in the spring of 1883, and Oliver married Elizabeth that fall. Both couples built homes on the Prescott ranch land, close enough to help with the work but far enough for privacy. The ranch became a true family compound, with 3 Prescott households working together. Louisa gave birth to another son in 1884, whom they named Thomas, and a final daughter in 1886, whom they named Margaret after Owen's mother. By then, Marcus was 6 years old and already showing signs of his parents' love for ranching. He followed his father everywhere, asking endless questions about the cattle and the horses and how everything worked. One evening in the summer of 1887, the entire extended Prescott family gathered for dinner at the main house. Otis and Hannah were there with their 1-year-old son. Oliver and Elizabeth had brought their twin daughters, who were 3. The house was full of noise and laughter and the chaotic joy of children playing. After dinner, as the adults sat on the porch watching the children chase fireflies in the yard, Owen reached for Louisa's hand. She laced her fingers through his and smiled. "Do you remember the first day you came here?" Owen asked. "When Otis shot at the sky to scare you away, how could I forget?" Louisa replied with a laugh. "I thought you were all completely insane." "We probably were," Owen admitted. "Lost in grief and too stubborn to admit we needed help." "You were not insane," Louisa said gently. "You were hurt. There is a difference." Owen looked out at the ranch, at the life they had built together. The fields were green and productive, the horses were healthy and strong, the cattle were thriving. But more than that, the ranch was alive with love and laughter again. His brothers were happy, their children were growing up surrounded by family, and every day felt like a gift. "I love you," he said, turning to Louisa. "I do not say it enough, but I do. You saved me, Louisa. You saved all of us." Louisa shook her head. "I did not save you," she said. "I just reminded you how to save yourselves. But I love you too, Owen Prescott. I love the life we have built together, and I love the man you are." They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the sun set over the prairie. Marcus ran up to them, breathless and excited, holding a jar with 3 fireflies glowing inside. "Look, Papa! Look, Mama! I caught them!" he exclaimed. "That is wonderful, son," Owen said, ruffling his hair. "But remember what we talked about. We have to let them go before bedtime so they can be with their families." Marcus nodded solemnly. "Because everything deserves to be free and happy," he recited, clearly repeating something he had been taught. "That is right," Louisa confirmed, smiling at her son. As Marcus ran back to join the other children, Owen felt a profound sense of peace settle over him. The ghosts of the past no longer haunted the ranch. Instead, the memory of his mother lived on in the values they upheld, the love they shared, and the family they had created. Margaret Prescott would be proud, Owen thought. She would love Louisa for the woman she was, for the way she had brought the family back together. She would delight in her grandchildren, in the continuation of the Prescott legacy. And most of all, she would be happy that her sons had finally allowed themselves to heal. The ranch continued to prosper over the years. Owen and Louisa's partnership strengthened with each passing season, built on a foundation of mutual respect, shared values, and deep love. They weathered droughts and hard winters, celebrated good harvests and successful cattle drives, and through it all, they remained devoted to each other and to the life they had built. As Marcus grew older, he took on more responsibility around the ranch. By the time he was 12, in 1892, he could ride as well as any adult hand and had inherited his mother's gift with horses. Catherine Rose, at 10, showed a talent for numbers and helped her mother with the ranch accounts. Thomas, at 8, was the most adventurous of the children, always exploring the far reaches of the property and coming home with stories of what he had discovered. Little Margaret, at 6, was already showing signs of the gentle wisdom her namesake had been known for. One afternoon in the late summer of 1892, Louisa found Owen sitting in the barn, looking at an old photograph of his mother. She sat down beside him, not saying anything, just offering her presence. "You ever worry that we are forgetting her?" Owen asked quietly. "It has been 23 years now. Sometimes I struggle to remember the sound of her voice." Louisa took the photograph and studied it carefully. Margaret Prescott looked back at her from across the years, her eyes kind and her smile gentle. "I do not think you could ever forget her," Louisa said. "She is in everything you do. The way you are patient with the children, the way you treat people with respect, the way you care for this land, those are all her gifts to you." "I suppose that is true," Owen acknowledged, "but sometimes I wish the children could have known her. I wish they could have experienced her love firsthand." "They know her through you," Louisa replied. "Through the stories you tell, through the traditions you maintain, through the person you are because she raised you. That is its own kind of immortality." Owen turned to his wife, this woman who had appeared in his life when he needed her most. "Thank you," he said, "for understanding, for never being jealous of my memories of her." "Why would I be jealous?" Louisa asked, genuinely puzzled. "She made you who you are. I love who you are. Therefore, I am grateful to her." It was such a simple, logical statement, but it struck Owen to his core. Louisa had never seen his mother's memory as competition. She had embraced it, honored it, and helped him integrate it into his life in a healthy way. "You are an extraordinary woman, Louisa Prescott," he said. "And you are an extraordinary man," she replied, kissing him softly. "Now come. Dinner is ready, and your children are threatening mutiny if they have to wait any longer to eat." In the fall of 1893, Otis and Hannah's oldest son turned 10, and the extended family threw a large celebration. Friends and neighbors from all over Wilson County attended, and the Prescott Ranch was filled with music and laughter. Owen stood on the porch of the main house, watching the festivities, and marveled at how much had changed since that day 15 years ago when Louisa had ridden into the yard asking for a job. The ranch that had been silent and sorrowful was now vibrant with life. 3 Prescott families lived and worked together in harmony. The next generation was growing up strong and healthy, learning the values of hard work and family loyalty. The land was productive and well tended. And Owen himself had transformed from a grief-stricken man hiding from the world into a husband, father, and community leader. Louisa appeared at his side, as she so often did, seeming to sense when he needed her presence. "What are you thinking about?" she asked. "About how lucky I am," Owen replied honestly. "About how close I came to missing all of this because I was too afraid to let go of the past." "But you did let go," Louisa reminded him. "That took courage. You made it possible," Owen said. "You showed me that I could honor my mother's memory while still building a future, that I did not have to choose between the past and the present." Louisa slipped her arm through his. "Your mother must have been an incredible woman to have inspired such devotion." "She was," Owen confirmed. "But so are you, Louisa. So are you." They stood together, watching their children play with their cousins, watching the community they had helped build celebrate together. The sun was setting over the Kansas prairie, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson. In that moment, Owen felt complete. The grief that had defined him for so many years had been transmuted into something else: gratitude for what he had lost and appreciation for what he had found. The winter of 1893 brought heavy snows to Kansas, and the ranch work became harder. But the Prescott families worked together, helping each other through the difficult season. Owen and his brothers fell into the old rhythms of their childhood, supporting each other through challenges and celebrating small victories together. Their wives formed their own close bonds, gathering for coffee and conversation while the children played. One particularly cold evening in January 1894, a blizzard trapped everyone in the main house. The 3 Prescott families, along with 2 ranch hands who could not make it back to town, were crowded into the warm space. Louisa made enormous pots of stew and cornbread, feeding everyone until they were satisfied. The children played games by the fireplace while the adults talked and laughed. As the evening wore on, someone suggested music. Louisa sat down at the old piano and began to play, her fingers moving confidently over the keys. She played hymns and folk songs, dance tunes and ballads. The children sang along, their voices high and sweet. The adults joined in, their deeper voices providing harmony. Owen watched his wife at the piano and felt his heart swell with love. She looked so at home there, so completely herself. And in that moment, he saw his mother too, not as a sad ghost haunting the edges of his memory, but as a warm presence woven into the fabric of his life. Margaret Prescott lived on in the values she had instilled, in the love she had modeled, and in the family that continued to grow and thrive. When the music finally ended and people began preparing for bed, laying out bedrolls in every available space, Owen pulled Louisa aside. "Tonight reminded me of something," he said quietly. "When I was a child, we had a storm like this. Everyone was trapped here for 3 days. My mother played the piano just like you did tonight, and everyone sang, and it felt like the whole world was contained in this house. I felt so safe and loved." "And do you feel that way now?" Louisa asked. "I do," Owen replied, "because you have given me back that feeling. You have made this house a home again, Louisa. You have given my children the same kind of childhood I had, full of love and security and family. That is the greatest gift anyone could give me." Louisa's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "That is all I ever wanted," she said. "To build something that would last, to create a life worth living. You have done that and more," Owen assured her. "You have exceeded every dream I never dared to have." They held each other close, listening to the wind howl outside while inside the house was warm and full of the people they loved. It was, Owen thought, a perfect moment, one he would remember for the rest of his life. The years continued to pass, each one bringing its own joys and sorrows, triumphs and challenges. In 1896, Louisa's father passed away in St. Louis, and she traveled east for the funeral. Owen went with her, leaving the ranch in the capable hands of his brothers. They spent 2 weeks with Louisa's sisters, reconnecting with family she had not seen in years. When they returned to Kansas, Louisa seemed both sad and at peace. "I am glad I went," she told Owen on the train ride home. "I needed to say goodbye properly, but I realized something while I was there. Wilson is my home now. The ranch is where I belong. With you and our children, with your brothers and their families. That is where my heart is." "And my heart is wherever you are," Owen replied, taking her hand. "It has been that way since the day you gentled that Mustang in the corral." Louisa laughed. "Was it really that moment?" "It was," Owen confirmed. "I looked at you and I saw strength and patience and kindness, and I thought, here is someone special, here is someone worth knowing." "And now you are stuck with me," Louisa teased. "Happily stuck," Owen replied. "For the rest of my life." In 1898, Marcus turned 18 and officially became a full partner in the ranch operation. He had his father's steadiness and his mother's innovative thinking, and Owen was proud to work alongside his son. Catherine Rose, at 16, had become the ranch bookkeeper, managing the finances with impressive skill. Thomas, at 14, was already talking about traveling west to see the Pacific Ocean. And Margaret, at 12, had inherited her grandmother's gift for making everyone around her feel valued and loved. One evening in the summer of 1898, as Owen and Louisa celebrated their 20th wedding anniversary, they took a long ride across the ranch land. They stopped at the top of a hill that overlooked the entire property, watching the sun set over the fields and pastures they had worked so hard to maintain. 20 years, Owen said wonderingly. "It feels like yesterday and a lifetime ago all at once." "I know what you mean," Louisa replied. "I can still remember that first day so clearly. How nervous I was, how determined to prove myself, how you looked at me like you could see right through to my soul." "I could," Owen admitted. "I saw someone strong and capable and kind, someone who had been hurt but had not let it make her bitter. Someone who could help us heal." "And did I?" Louisa asked. "Help you heal?" Owen turned to face her fully, taking both her hands in his. "You did more than help me heal," he said. "You taught me how to live again. You showed me that it was possible to honor the past while embracing the future. You gave me children and a partnership and a love I never thought I would find. You made me whole, Louisa." Louisa smiled, her honey-colored eyes soft with affection. "You made me whole too," she said. "I was so lost when I came here. I had lost my mother, my father, my home. I was just drifting, looking for somewhere to belong. And you gave me that. You and your brothers, this ranch, this life. You gave me purpose and family and a future." They kissed as the sun disappeared below the horizon, painting the sky in brilliant streaks of orange and purple. When they finally pulled apart, the first stars were beginning to appear. "You think your mother is watching?" Louisa asked softly, looking up at the sky. "Do you think she knows how things turned out?" Owen considered the question. He had struggled with it for years, unsure what he believed about the afterlife and the persistence of consciousness after death. But in this moment, looking at the stars with his wife's hand in his, he found he had an answer. "I think," he said slowly, "that if there is any way for her to know, she does. And I think she is proud, not just of me but of all of us, of the family we have built, the life we have created. I think she is glad I found you, Louisa. I think she would have loved you as much as I do." "I hope so," Louisa said, "because I would have loved her too. Any woman who could raise 3 sons as good as you and your brothers must have been extraordinary." They rode back to the ranch house in comfortable silence, secure in their love and their life together. When they arrived, they found their children waiting for them with a surprise anniversary dinner. The table was set with the good china, candles were lit, and their children had prepared all of Owen and Louisa's favorite foods. "We wanted to do something special," Marcus explained. "To thank you for being such good parents. And for showing us what love looks like," Catherine Rose added. Owen felt tears prick his eyes. He looked at Louisa and saw that she was crying too, but smiling through her tears. Their children had become remarkable people, kind and thoughtful and loving. They had broken the cycle of grief that had nearly consumed the Prescott family, creating instead a legacy of love and resilience. "Thank you," Owen said, his voice thick with emotion. "All of you. For being exactly who you are." As they sat down to dinner together, surrounded by laughter and love, Owen sent up a silent prayer of gratitude. To his mother, for raising him to be a man capable of love. To his father, for showing him the value of hard work and integrity. To his brothers, for standing by him through the darkest times. And most of all, to Louisa, for riding into his life that summer day in 1878 and changing everything. The years of the new century brought changes to the Prescott Ranch. In 1901, Marcus married a young woman from town named Sarah, and they built their own home on the ranch land. Catherine Rose left for college in 1903, the first member of the family to pursue higher education. She wrote long letters home about her studies and her adventures, and Louisa read each one aloud to the family at dinner. Thomas did eventually travel west to see the Pacific Ocean, working for a year on a ranch in California before returning home with stories and a new appreciation for Kansas. Young Margaret, true to her namesake's nature, became a teacher in Wilson, beloved by her students for her patience and kindness. Through it all, Owen and Louisa remained the steady center of the family. They had become the patriarch and matriarch, the ones everyone turned to for advice and support. They settled disputes, celebrated victories, mourned losses, and kept the family connected. In the summer of 1908, the extended Prescott family held a reunion to celebrate the 30th anniversary of the ranch's revival. Everyone came. Otis and Hannah with their children and grandchildren, Oliver and Elizabeth with their families, Marcus and Sarah with their 3 young ones, Catherine Rose home from her teaching position in Topeka, Thomas with his new fiancée, and Margaret with her husband of 2 years. The ranch was filled with 4 generations of Prescotts, all of them connected by bonds of blood and love. Owen stood on the porch, now 58 years old with gray in his hair and lines on his face, and marveled at what had been built. Louisa, at 52, stood beside him with her hand in his. She had aged gracefully, her dark hair now streaked with silver but her honey eyes still bright with intelligence and warmth. "We did good, did we not?" she said, echoing his thoughts. "We did better than good," Owen replied. We created a legacy, not just of land and cattle, but of love and family. That will outlast us, Louisa. Long after we are gone, this will remain. I like to think your mother would approve, Louisa said. I know she would, Owen replied with certainty. She wanted her sons to be happy, to have families of their own, to continue the Prescott name with honor. We have done all that and more. As the celebration continued into the evening, with music and dancing and storytelling, Owen found a quiet moment to slip away to the small garden they had planted in his mother's memory. The flowers were in full bloom, their colors vivid in the fading light. He stood there, remembering the woman who had shaped him, who had taught him to be strong and kind and true. Thank you, Mother, he said softly to the gathering dusk, for everything you gave me, for the values you instilled, for the love you showed, for raising me to be the man I am. I hope I have honored your memory. I hope I have made you proud. He felt Louisa's presence before she spoke, her hand slipping into his. She is proud, Louisa said with quiet conviction. How could she not be? They stood together in the garden, two people who had found each other against the odds and built a life of meaning and purpose. The sounds of their family celebrating drifted through the evening air, a symphony of love and connection. As they walked back to join the party, Owen realized that his mother's greatest gift had not been any single lesson or value. It had been teaching him that love was the foundation of everything worthwhile. Love for family, love for the land, love for the people who shared your life. That love had sustained him through grief, guided him to Louisa, and created the beautiful, complicated, wonderful family that now filled his ranch. The Prescott Ranch continued to thrive well into the new century. Owen and Louisa worked together until their bodies no longer allowed it, then supervised from the porch, offering advice and support to their children and grandchildren who took over the daily operations. They had built something that would endure, a family legacy rooted in love and hard work. In their final years together, Owen and Louisa spent long evenings on the porch, holding hands and watching the sun set over the land they had nurtured together. They told each other the same stories they had told 100 times before, finding comfort in the familiar rhythms of their shared life. They were, by any measure, blessed. When Owen passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 72 in 1918, surrounded by his family, his final words were of gratitude. Thank you, he whispered to Louisa, who held his hand, for everything, for saving me, for loving me, for this beautiful life. It was my honor, Louisa replied through her tears, every single day. Louisa lived another 8 years, continuing to be the heart of the Prescott family. She watched her grandchildren grow up, welcomed great-grandchildren into the world, and never stopped telling stories about Owen and their life together. When she finally joined him in 1926, at the age of 70, she was buried beside him in the family cemetery on the ranch, under the oak tree where they had been married 48 years earlier. The Prescott Ranch endured for generations after them, passed down from parent to child, a living monument to the love between a rancher's son and the woman who reminded him that healing was possible. And on quiet evenings, when the wind blew just right across the Kansas prairie, it was said you could hear the sound of piano music drifting from the old ranch house, a reminder that love, once planted, never truly dies.